You crouch beside the embers of a dying fire. The night presses close, heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth and old smoke. Each breath feels stolen, too loud, as if the darkness itself is listening. The stars above are sharp and cold, but they do not comfort you. They are indifferent witnesses. The forest shifts around you, branches groaning, insects shrilling, the distant rush of a stream. Yet beneath it all, there is another sound, a rhythm older than fear itself. Paw steps. They do not hurry. They do not stumble. They come slow, deliberate, carrying the weight of something that does not need to rush. Your hand closes tighter on the sharpened stick at your side. A spear, though barely worthy of the name. Its tip is charred in fire, hardened but fragile. You know it will not pierce much more than flesh. And flesh is nothing against the monster stalking the edge of your firelight. The flames are weak now, coughing sparks into the black. You feed them with a handful of twigs, desperate, and the shadows leap across the clearing. For a heartbeat, the trees glow red. And in that glow, you see it. Two eyes, low and wide apart, shining like molten amber. Your chest locks. Your throat dries. The hairs on your arms rise with a primal knowing that runs deeper than words. The creature steps into sight. Its body is compact but immense, thick with muscle, its shoulders rolling like stone grinding against stone. Each step is silence given weight. Its coat is pale gold, patterned faintly with darker stripes that ripple as it moves. But it is the head, gods, the head that steals your breath. The jaws are wide, the skull broad, and from its mouth hang two fangs the length of your forearm, curving down like ivory knives. A saber-toothed cat. Smilodon. The apex of predators. The end of hunters. You've heard stories of what it can do, seen bones shattered in a single bite, watched men vanish into its claws, their screams cut short as if the night itself swallowed them. Even mammoths fear this beast. And now it is here, watching you, measuring you. Behind you, your people sleep, the tribe huddled in skins and woven reeds, children's breaths shallow and quick, elders murmuring in dreams. They do not hear it. Not yet, but you do, and it knows you do. The cat lowers its body, muscles tighten, its tail lashes. Every part of it hums with power, as if the earth itself has chosen to destroy you through this one perfect animal. You raise your spear. The wood trembles in your grip. You know it is useless. The beast is faster, heavier, stronger. It has claws that can gut you before your arm finishes its swing. It has teeth that can end your life in the space of a single breath. You are not built for this fight. You were never built for this world. No claws, no fangs, no armor, no speed, just weak flesh, soft skin, and brittle bones. And yet, something else burns inside you. It is not in your hands, not in your muscles, not in your teeth. It is behind your eyes. The fire sputters, throwing sparks into the dark. The cat flinches, just slightly but enough for you to see it, a hesitation. And in that pause you glimpse the truth. You may be prey, but prey with fire is no longer prey. Prey with memory is something more. Prey with thought is dangerous. The saber-tooth shifts, circling, uncertain. Its tail flicks, and its golden eyes glint with confusion. For the first time in history, the predator does not know the ending of the hunt before it begins. And the question rises in your mind like smoke from the embers. What if the humans aren't the prey anymore? You see it in the firelight, but you do not yet understand what it truly is. The saber-toothed cat is no ordinary predator. It is the culmination of millions of years of evolution, a creature honed by time and necessity, built for one purpose, the taking of life. Smilodon. Its name will only be spoken tens of thousands of years later by people with books and cities. But in this moment, you know it as death itself. It is larger than any lion you could imagine. A beast of compact power, shoulders higher than your waist, weighing nearly half a ton. Where the lion is sleek, Smilodon is thick, barrel-chested, every bone reinforced, every muscle heavy with purpose. Its skull is broad and short, built not for endurance, but for ambush. The jaws open wider than those of any living cat, gaping nearly 120 degrees. And within them, the fangs, ivory scimitars. 7, sometimes 8 inches long, grown not for tearing flesh, but for ending life in an instant. They slide past sinew and skin, sink into throats, sever veins, crush windpipes. A single strike, precise as lightning, and the hunt is finished. It is not speed that makes this beast terrible. Smilodon is no cheetah. It cannot run far, cannot chase prey across plains. No, its kingdom is surprise. Silence. Stillness. It waits. It watches. It listens. And when the moment comes, it erupts from the dark like a storm, and the world ends for whatever it touches. Its body is designed for this. The front legs are enormous, pillars of bone wrapped in muscle thick enough to wrestle down creatures far larger than itself. Mastodons, bison, even the woolly rhinoceros. Where lions claw to wound, Smilodon claws to hold, to anchor, to crush. Its bite is not the strongest, in truth, it is weaker than a lion's. But it does not need brute force. The saber is a surgeon's blade. It bypasses strength for precision, slipping through veins, arteries, soft flesh, the most vulnerable places. This predator is a paradox, slow but unstoppable, fragile in the wrong places, but perfect in its moment of attack, its entire existence balanced on a single strike. And for hundreds of thousands of years, that strike ruled unchallenged. Imagine the world it hunted in. Great herds of mammoths trudging across frozen plains, armored glyptodons rolling like living fortresses, giant ground sloths rising 3 times the height of a man. Among these titans, Smilodon stalked, a shadow among giants, feeding on flesh that would break the bones of weaker hunters. But it did not always hunt the mammoth. Sometimes it hunted you. Your kind, fragile, slow, soft, was the simplest prey. Your bones littered its caves. Your stories whispered of it long before words were carved into stone. To face a Smilodon alone was not survival, it was suicide. No claws, no fangs, no muscle to match it. One mistake, one sound, one flicker of fire too weak, and you would be dragged into the dark, your blood soaking into the soil, another meal in an endless cycle of death. This was not a battle of equals. This was physics, and physics, for tens of thousands of years, was against you. The cat stares at you now from the edge of firelight. Its breath clouds the night air. Its eyes are not cruel nor merciful. They are empty, ancient, inevitable. You should not exist against this creature. By all laws of nature, your kind should have been erased. Smilodon should have ruled until the end of time. And yet, it hesitates. It does not know it yet, but it is staring at something its claws cannot hold, its fangs cannot pierce. Not stronger flesh, not sharper teeth, something different, a spark, a thought, a mind, the very thing that would one day turn the predator's roar into silence and carve the path for your species to inherit the earth. But for now, in this chapter of the world, Smilodon still rules. The night still belongs to monsters, and you, crouched in the glow of a dying fire, are not yet the hunter. You are still prey. You sit by the fire, the spear shaking in your hand. The beast circles just beyond the light, and the truth claws at you harder than its fangs ever could. You were never built to fight this world. Look at yourself. No claws, no armor, no hide thick enough to stop teeth. Strip away your fire and your stick, and you are nothing but meat. Your skin is thin, fragile. One bite and blood spills. One slash and tendons part. A fall from the wrong height and your bones snap like brittle branches. Your speed, laughable. The deer can vanish in a blur. The horse can run for miles. Even the lumbering mammoth can outpace you. You are slow, clumsy, always half a step behind the rhythm of nature. Your strength, pathetic. A chimpanzee, smaller than you, can tear you apart with its bare hands. The great bears can swat men into the dirt. Even the Smilodon, shorter than a man's shoulder, can drag prey twice your weight without effort. Your senses, dulled. The eagle sees 10 times farther. The wolf smells your fear from leagues away. The owl hears the heartbeat of a mouse in the grass. And you stumble in the dark, blind without fire, deaf to whispers of danger until it is already too late. You were not born hunters. You were born food, even your teeth flat, blunt, clumsy. They do not rip, they do not pierce, they do not crush. The saber tooth carves throats. You gnaw roots. And your weapons, at first there were none. You did not leap with claws. You did not strike with fangs. You crouched, and you fled, and you hid in trees hoping the beast could not climb fast enough. Every part of you is wrong for this world. The world of ice and teeth. The world of thunder-hooved herds and predators that ruled before your kind could even shape words. You should have died out. You should have been erased. And yet, something small, fragile, almost invisible, flickers inside you. When the saber-tooth roars, your body shakes, but your mind does not only fear, it remembers. When the mammoth charges, your legs stumble, but your mind searches for patterns. When the night falls, your eyes fail, but your mind imagines fire. That was the secret, not strength, not speed, not teeth, but thought. The world gave you nothing. No armor, no weapon, no power in your flesh. So you built them. At first, clumsy sticks hardened in fire. Stones sharp enough to draw blood. Nets woven from plant fibers. Tools, tricks, ideas. The predators had instinct, fast, brutal, unchanging. But you had memory. You had imagination. You could be weak 1,000 times and still survive once. And that one survival was enough to teach. Enough to pass knowledge from mouth to ear, from hand to hand, from one generation to the next. The cat could kill, but it could not teach. You could, and that was the difference. That was the crack in the wall of nature's perfection. But crouched here, fire hissing low, the saber-tooth prowling in silence, that difference feels like a lie. Your weakness still surrounds you. The beast is still the master of this night. And yet, behind your eyes, the spark grows. One day, it will burn into something more. One day, it will turn prey into predator. But not tonight. Tonight, you are still the fragile animal that should not have survived. Tonight, you are the weakest thing in the dark. The beast circles the clearing. Its eyes flicker in the dark, and your breath rasps shallow in your chest. The fire between you is small, weak, trembling in the wind. You know it will not hold the night forever. But fire was not always yours. Long before this moment, before your tribe learned to guard the embers through storm and rain, fire belonged only to the sky. It fell in lightning, it roared in volcanoes, it devoured forests without mercy. Fire was chaos, fire was terror, animals fled from it, even the greatest of predators turned away from its heat. Fire was not a tool, it was a god. And then, one day, one of your ancestors stepped closer instead of fleeing. Closer to the blackened tree where lightning had struck. Closer to the smoking grass. Closer to the heat and the glow. The flames licked their skin and they recoiled, but they did not run. They reached with trembling hands. They grasped a burning branch, and they carried it into the night. That moment, fragile, foolish, impossible, changed everything. At first, fire was only borrowed. Stolen from storms, kept alive in smouldering wood, nurtured like a child. But slowly, over generations, your kind learned to make it, to coax it from sparks struck by stone, to breathe life into embers until they roared into flame. And with fire came power. The predators, once certain of their dominion, began to hesitate. Their eyes, adapted to hunt in shadows, recoiled from the brightness. Their bodies, built for muscle and fang, shied from the searing heat. The fire turned night into day. The fire turned the hunted into something untouchable. No claw could reach it. No tooth could pierce it. No instinct could teach predators how to overcome it. Fire was more than light, more than warmth. It was a weapon. Imagine it. Your ancestors ringed their camps with flames, driving back the wolves, the lions, the smilodon. They learned to cook their food, softening flesh, unlocking energy that made their bodies and brains grow stronger. They hardened the tips of their spears in its heart, turning brittle wood into something sharp enough to pierce skin. The fire was a shield, a sword, a forge, and a teacher. It did not live in muscle or bone. It lived in thought, and thought could spread. One tribe passed it to another, one child to the next, until across continents, the dark of night began to shiver with sparks. Even now, crouched in the clearing, you see the cat pause. It circles, but it does not rush forward. Its tail lashes, but its paws hold back. The fire hisses, spits, dances, and the predator does not understand. It knows how to tear flesh. It knows how to break bone, but it does not know this. For the first time in history, the balance shifts. The world is no longer divided between predator and prey. There is something new, something unnatural, something that should not exist, and yet does. A flame in human hands. The saber-tooth's growl rumbles low, uncertain. The fire crackles louder. And in that fragile circle of light, your kind takes its first step out of the shadows. From this night forward, you will not only endure the dark, you will claim it. Fire is not just survival, It is the spark of domination. The fire bought you time, but time is never enough. Predators lingered at the edges of flame, patient and hungry. They watched, they circled, they waited for weakness. And when the fire guttered low, when the embers cooled, they struck. So fire alone could not save you. You needed something more. It began with sticks. Broken branches torn from trees, brandished in shaking hands. They frightened the wolves, maybe bruised a wild dog's skull, but against the saber tooth, they snapped like brittle bones. Still, a stick was better than empty fists. Then came the stone. Somewhere, long before memory, one of your kind struck rock against rock and shaped an edge sharp enough to cut. That edge turned stick into spear. Suddenly, wood could pierce flesh. Suddenly, distance meant survival. The first spears were clumsy, splintering with each thrust. Many hunters died with them buried uselessly in the ground, but each death taught the survivors. Each failure carved new lessons into memory. And humans remembered. The predators did not change. Their claws were as they had always been. Their fangs did not grow sharper. Their tactics remained the same. But you learned, you taught. You passed knowledge from firelight to firelight, from one trembling child to the next. And the spear grew stronger. You learned to harden its tip in flame, the wood blackened but unbroken, strong enough to drive into hide. You bound stone blades to its head with sinew and resin, crafting a weapon that cut deeper, held firmer. The spear became more than a branch. It became a tool of intent. Still, it demanded closeness. Too close. To thrust a spear meant to risk claws tearing into your belly, teeth sinking into your throat. Too many hunters died with their weapons still in hand, too near the beast they sought to kill. So another leap was born. The atlatl, a simple lever carved from wood, but a revolution hidden in its shape. It extended the arm, magnified strength, turned a thrown spear into a missile of death. No longer did you need to wait for the predator's charge. You could strike from a distance. Stone tips splintered bone, barbed heads dug into flesh, impossible to shake free. Weighted javelins flew farther, faster, surer. The hunt changed. Now it was not you who closed the gap. It was the beast that bled before it reached you. Each weapon carried not only death, but memory. Every sharpened edge was a thought made solid. Every improvement was an idea passed down, multiplied, perfected, and the predators could not follow. The saber-tooth, for all its majesty, did not learn. It could only leap, strike, kill, the way its ancestors had for ages uncounted. Its claws could not grow longer in one lifetime. Its mind could not imagine a spear, but you could. That was the great divide. That was the line in the soil of time. The first spear was not the end. It was the beginning of a war no predator could ever win. For when humans learned to throw death from afar, the world itself began to bend. No longer did you stand trembling in the dark, waiting for teeth. You carried the dark with you. You carried fire, stone, distance, and memory. And every step, every invention, was another thread in the net you would one day cast over the earth itself. But in this moment, crouched beside the fire, spear in hand, the beast still circles. Its fangs gleam. Its breath steams. Its hunger does not fade. The weapon you hold is only the beginning. The battle is still ahead. The saber-tooth waits at the edge of firelight. Its paws are silent, its body still. It is patience given form. For hundreds of thousands of years, this instinct, this waiting, this coiled spring of muscle has been enough. Predators do not dream. They do not imagine. They repeat. The cat is a machine of flesh, built by evolution, driven by hunger, perfected by repetition. It knows when to stalk, when to pounce, when to kill. But instinct, for all its sharpness, is also a cage. The saber-tooth cannot change its methods. It cannot wonder if the prey has learned something new. It cannot teach the next generation how to fight fire, how to dodge a spear. Each cub is born with the same program written into its blood. But you are different. Your fear is not just fear. It is memory. The moment you see the beast's shadow, you remember the story of your uncle torn in half. The moment you hear the grass shift, you recall your grandmother's warning about moving quietly with the wind. Every loss becomes a lesson, and lessons can be shared. At the fire, you whisper what you saw. At the hunt, you show the child how to notch stone to keep it from shattering. When someone dies, Their mistakes are carved into the tribe's memory so they will not be made again. No other predator does this. The wolves hunt in packs, but they do not invent new tricks. The lions stalk together, but their hunt today is the same as it was 10,000 years ago. The saber-tooth waits in silence, as it always has, as it always will. You, on the other hand, are chaos. One day you drive the cat away with fire. The next day you throw a spear from twice as far. The next you surround it from 3 sides, your tribe working like a single organism. Every failure fuels change. Every victory fuels growth. This is not instinct. This is culture. Your kind is fragile in body but infinite in mind. You can bend, you can break, you can rebuild stronger than before. You are not bound to one way of survival. You invent 1,000. The saber-tooth has muscle. You have memory. The saber-tooth has fangs. You have imagination. The saber-tooth kills what is before it. You kill what has not yet arrived. You plan, you trap, you deceive. And in that deception lies your greatest weapon, unpredictability. The beast does not expect fire. The beast does not expect stone flying faster than the arm can throw. The beast does not expect to be surrounded, confused, forced into hesitation. For the first time, predators face prey that rewrites the rules. One mind is fragile, but 100 minds, joined by words and stories, can build a wall stronger than any fang. The saber-tooth will never know this. It cannot. Its instinct is its strength, and its prison. But you, with your trembling hands, your brittle bones, your weak flesh, are not bound. Your mind is a fire no beast can extinguish. And from that fire will come weapons, strategies, and futures the predator cannot imagine. This is the beginning of the end for the masters of the dark. Not because you are stronger, not because you are faster, but because you are different. Because you can change. The forest is not neutral. The river is not silent. The cliffs, the caves, the tall grass, all of them can kill. Most creatures survive by avoiding danger in the land. The deer flees the cliff. The wolf avoids the river's pull. The saber-tooth stalks where the ground is open and the wind carries scent. But you do something different. You see the land not as threat, but as ally. The cliff that swallows the deer can swallow the cat. The river that drowns the careless can carry away a predator heavier than you. The cave that traps you in darkness can also trap the beast, sealing it in forever. This is the turning point, the moment when the world itself becomes your first true weapon. The ambush at the gorge, you and your kin wait at the narrow gorge, where the rock funnels all movement into a single path. The beast does not know it walks into a trap. Its roar shakes the air, its fangs gleam, but when the spears rain from above, there is nowhere to run. The cliff is not just stone, it is a blade in your hand. The river hunt another tribe learns to drive the cat toward water. The predator, heavier, slower, slips on the slick stones. The current seizes its body, pulling it under. Your kind does not even touch it. The river kills for you. The water is not just water. It is a silent assassin. The grassland deception, in tall grass you vanish. Your weak body disappears, but your mind sharpens. The predator cannot see you until it is too late, until it is surrounded, until every step it takes brings a spear closer. The grass is not just cover. It is an army at your side. The cave prison sometimes. The hunt is not to kill, but to outlast. The saber-tooth follows you into the cave, drawn by the smell of blood. It does not see the fire you prepared at the mouth. You seal it inside with smoke and flame. Its strength is meaningless. Its claws scrape stone until silence falls. The cave is not just shelter. It is a tomb. This is what sets you apart. Not muscle, not fang, not speed, but the ability to turn the earth itself into a weapon. Predators live within the land. You change it. You bend it. You make it serve you. Every ridge, every river, every cave becomes a battlefield chosen by your mind. The saber-tooth rules only where instinct tells it to rule. You rule everywhere. Because you do not fight the predator alone, you fight with the weight of the world at your side. And when the land itself becomes your weapon, even the strongest beast learns fear. The night belongs to the predators. Alone you are nothing. A single body, fragile, slow, and weak, disappears into the jaws of the dark. But together, the night begins to fracture. The first signal a cry, not of panic, but of warning. One voice, sharp and high, splits the silence. The tribe stirs men, women, children. Every hand knows its place. The beast does not understand the sound. It hears only chaos. But this chaos is design. The dance of confusion, the cat stalks one figure, but another leaps from shadow, and another, shouting, beating a stick against stone, and another, circling behind with fire in hand. The predator's mind reels. Its instincts scream, one prey, one kill. But here there is no single target. There are many, too many. The world itself feels alive, every shadow moving, every flicker of flame threatening. For the first time in its reign, the predator hesitates. The line of spears humans form a crescent, their points glinting in firelight. Not random, not accidental, placed with thought. One pushes forward, then pulls back. Another feints. Another throws. The cat lunges, but a wall meets it. Not of stone, but of minds working as one. This is the birth of formation, the first strategy of war. Memory made flesh, the hunt does not die with the night. Around the fire, stories become blueprints. Hands carve shapes into dirt. Elders repeat the rhythm of the ambush, the timing of the cry, the weight of the spear. The night still breathes with danger. The air still trembles with the growl of the saber-tooth, but something has shifted. You no longer crouch in the shadows. You no longer wait for mercy. Now you stand. The standoff, the beast prowls the edge of firelight. Its golden eyes burn. Its muscles ripple with ancient power, 1,000 generations of perfected killing. It waits for fear. It waits for you to break, but you do not move. The flames crackle, the spears gleam, and the tribe holds the line. For the first time, the predator hesitates not from confusion, not from chaos, but from recognition. It senses that the balance is shifting. The counterstrike, the cry goes up. Not of warning, but of war. Spears rain. Fire leaps. The beast lunges, but this time it is met not with retreat, but with advance. You move forward, step by step together. A wall of fire. A storm of sharpened stone. The hunter becomes the hunted. The saber-tooth stumbles, wounded, retreating into the darkness. And for the first time in its reign, it flees you. The moment the world changed, it is not victory in muscle. It is not triumph in claw or fang. It is a victory of mind, of memory, of unity. From this night forward, the predators of the earth will never look at you the same. They will smell fire and hesitate. They will see a circle of spears and falter. They will learn that in the dark of the world, a new power has risen. The birth of a myth around the fire, the story is told, not just of survival, but of conquest, not just of fear, but of triumph. The children listen with wide eyes. The elders nod with knowing pride. And somewhere in the silence of the night, the land itself seems to shift. You are no longer prey. You are something else, something new, something the earth has never seen before. The closing word: we were never the strongest. We were never the fastest. We were never the fiercest. But we endured, we adapted, we remembered. And with fire in our hands and thought in our minds, we stepped out of the shadows, not as the hunted, but as the hunters. The saber-tooth is gone. The shadows of the forest no longer whisper with fangs at every step. But survival does not end with the fleeing of beasts. It begins with what you hold in your hands. And in your hands, fire lives. The fragile flame, it is not enough to strike the spark. The flame must be kept alive. For a night without fire is a night where the darkness returns with all its hunger. So the tribe gives the fire a keeper, one who feeds it with wood, guards it from rain, shields it from wind. A child may fall asleep, a hunter may stray, but the firekeeper cannot falter. To lose the flame is to lose everything. Fire as hearth around it, the tribe gathers, not just for warmth, but for story. The flicker of light paints shadows on cave walls, beasts, hunters, spirits. In the rhythm of the flame, memory becomes myth, myth becomes law, and law becomes culture. The fire is no longer only survival, it is identity. Fire as weapon, but the flame does not stay by the hearth, it marches with you into the hunt. Grasslands are burned to flush prey. Smoke blinds predators. Walls of fire cut off escape. The land itself bends to your will beneath the flame. Forests that once hid fangs now yield clearings for camps. The wilderness begins to change, not for the beasts, but for you. Fire as faith, some say the flame is a spirit. a living thing that eats, breathes, and hungers like any beast. But unlike beasts, it obeys, it bends, it serves. The first gods are not carved in stone. They are born in sparks. They dance in the firelight, and they whisper to your kind that you are chosen, the keepers of the flame. The age turns now. When predators see fire, they retreat. When prey smells smoke, it scatters. When night falls, you do not fear. You claim the darkness as your own. The age of terror bends into a new age, an age of firekeepers. And with fire at your side, the world itself begins to change. No longer a realm where humans barely survive, but a realm that slowly, steadily becomes yours. The flame burns steady now. It no longer flickers as a desperate spark, but glows as the center of your world. And around it, the people gather, not scattered, not wandering alone, but bound together. From this bond, the first tribes are born. The circle of kin you sit shoulder to shoulder, blood and bone tied by more than chance. Brothers, mothers, elders, children, each with a role. Hunters carry spears, gatherers weave nets, elders remember, children learn. No single human survives the wild. But together, each weakness is shielded, each strength multiplied. This is not mere gathering. This is structure. This is tribe. The first rituals when a hunt succeeds, the tribe does not simply eat. They celebrate. The flesh is shared by custom. The bones are laid with care. The fire crackles as chants rise, words without meaning to beasts, but heavy with power to those who speak them. These are the first rituals, the beginnings of order, of law, of belief, not carved in stone, but carved in memory, repeated until they shape the tribe's very soul. The elders' voices, the predators have instinct, but you have something greater, memory made living. The elders sit by the fire, voices rough with years, teaching what the young must know. How to read the tracks in mud, how to shape stone into blades, how to lay snares and see the shift of the wind. Their words outlive their bodies, and so the tribe grows not only in number, but in wisdom. The hunter's brotherhood on the hunt, you are no longer lone stalkers. You move like a single body, each man and woman knowing their part. One drives the prey forward. Another waits with spear raised. Another circles, silent as stone. When the kill comes, it is not a victory of one, but of all. And with each shared success, trust deepens. The bond of tribe tightens. The strength of many a lone saber-tooth still prowls the valley. Its roar still shakes the night. But when it comes, it does not face a single trembling figure. It faces a wall of bodies, voices, fire and stone. The cat turns away, not because it cannot kill one of you, but because it cannot kill all of you. That is the power of tribe. The dawn of society, the first tribes rise not as rulers, not as kings, not as conquerors, but as survivors bound in unity. They are the seeds of all that will come, villages, nations, civilizations. But here, in this moment, they are simply people who chose not to face the dark alone. The beasts still roam. The earth still trembles. But the fire burns steady, and the circle of kin grows stronger. And from this circle, humanity steps closer toward a destiny no beast can match. The firelight flickers on a face gone still. A hunter lies in the dust, his spear broken, his breath forever silenced. The tribe gathers, not in hunger, not in battle, but in grief. For the first time, you do not just see the end. You feel it. The weight of loss, the body is heavy in your arms, heavier than when alive, as though all the spirit that once moved it has fled. The children cry. The elders sit in silence. The fire crackles, but no one speaks. Something has shifted. This is more than flesh. This is memory made flesh. This is blood you cannot forget. The first burials the tribe does not leave him for the scavengers. They dig. Hands tear into the earth, shaping a hollow grave. Stones are laid carefully across his chest. Red ochre paints his skin. A spear is placed beside him, as though he will hunt again beyond the veil of night. The beasts bury nothing. But you bury your dead, because you cannot accept that all ends here. The birth of belief around the fire, questions rise. Where has he gone? Does he walk in the smoke above the flames? Does he whisper in the wind? Does he return in the cry of the newborn child? No one knows. But the not knowing is too heavy to bear. So stories are born, spirits, shadows. Afterlives, not as lies, but as the mind's armor against despair. Belief is not weakness. It is survival of the soul. Blood remembered the tribe does not speak the hunter's name once. They speak it again and again, until the children remember, until the unborn will hear it in time. Through story, he does not vanish. Through memory, he still hunts, still walks, still fights beside you. This is the first immortality. Not carved in stone, not promised by gods, but carried in the breath of the living. Death as teacher his fall is not only loss, it is lesson. The scar left by the predator shows where to strike next time. The broken spear teaches how to shape a stronger one. The burial mound warns others. Here one of us fell, and here we learned. Even death becomes knowledge. Even grief becomes survival. The spirit of humanity, beasts bleed and die and vanish. But you bleed, you die, and you remember. The red ochre stains the soil. The spears gleam in the firelight. The chants rise into the night. And in that ritual, in that memory, in that unbroken thread of story, you become more than flesh. You become something eternal. The forest is quiet tonight, not because the predators have fled, but because the danger is not claw and fang. It is firelight on the horizon. It is voices not your own. It is another tribe. The meeting at the river, two circles of fire, two groups of hunters. The river runs between you, glinting like a blade. At first there is silence, cautious, uncertain, but hunger gnaws. Territory matters. The same fish, the same shelter, the same hunting ground cannot belong to both. The world is not large enough for peace. The spark of violence, a spear is thrown, not at beast, but at man. The cry that follows is different than the roar of a cat. It is sharper, more final, and suddenly the night explodes. Stone strikes stone. Fire leaps. Blood spills, not of prey, not of predator, but of kin. This is the birth of war. The predator within the saber-tooth killed for hunger. The wolf hunted for survival. But you kill for land, for water, for vengeance, for pride. The predator without has faded into the dark. The predator within has awakened. The first raids one tribe strikes another in the dawn mist. They burn the food. They scatter the fire. They take captives, not prey, not beasts, but people. The cries of the fallen rise to the sky, and for the first time, humanity learns the taste of victory and loss at the hands of itself. Memory of blood around the fire, the elders tell of the raid. The names of the fallen are spoken. The names of the killers are cursed. The children listen, and they do not forget. The beasts are no longer the only threat. Now the greatest danger to man is man. The double-edged gift, the same unity that gave you strength, now divides. The same fire that defended you now destroys. The same memory that made you immortal now chains you to vengeance. The first wars are not great armies. They are not kingdoms. They are shadows in the grass, raids at dawn, spears in the night. But they change everything. Because now the tribe learns not only how to fight the beasts, but how to fight each other. The path ahead from this blood, new things will grow. Alliances, enemies, territories, borders. The beasts may still stalk the night, but a darker truth has taken root. The fiercest predator humanity will ever face is itself. The fire burns low, the tribe gathers close, and in the glow of the embers the children watch. Wide-eyed, silent, listening, they are not yet hunters, not yet warriors, but they will be. For the tribe cannot survive without the next generation stepping into the circle. The first lessons before they can hold spears, the children learn with their eyes. They watch how the hunters stalk the deer. They listen as the gatherers name the roots and berries. They memorize the cries of the owl, the howl of the wolf, the rustle of grass that means danger. Every sound, every shadow is a teacher. And the children absorb it all, for ignorance is death. The right of fear at night, the elders test them. They are led into the forest, alone, with nothing but the flame of a single torch. The darkness presses in. Eyes glimmer in the trees. Every instinct screams to run back to the safety of the fire circle. But they do not run. They must not run. For courage is the first weapon, sharper than any blade. The blooding of the hunt when the time comes, the children are no longer merely watchers. They are sent on the hunt, not with the whole tribe, only a small band, guided by one elder. The prey may be small, a boar, a deer, a bird, but it is their first kill. The moment the spear strikes, something changes. Fear becomes pride. Hesitation becomes memory. The child becomes hunter. Scars as teachers, some return with wounds, a gash from a tusk, a bite from a wolf, a burn from fire. But these scars are not shame. They are stories etched into flesh, lessons carried forever. Each scar says, I faced the dark and I lived. The binding of the tribe. When the young succeed, the tribe does not simply nod. They celebrate. The fire roars higher. Songs rise into the night. The hunters place painted marks on the child's skin, red ochre, ash, charcoal, symbols of their passage. They are no longer merely children. They are the tribe. The circle of survival is unbroken. The eternal cycle. One day, they will sit by the fire as elders. Their own children will listen with wide eyes. They will tell of hunts long past, of beasts now gone, of wars fought in the dawn of memory. And the circle will continue. Because humanity's greatest gift is not only survival, it is teaching. It is the passing of fire, blood, and memory from one hand to the next. The children of the hunt every tribe knows. Without the young, the fire dies. Without the young, the stories vanish. Without the young, the tribe itself ceases to exist. So they are tested, hardened, shaped, not to be cruel, but to endure. Because one day the darkness will come again. And when it does, it will be the children who stand with fire in their hands and say, we are ready. For countless generations, the tribe wandered, following herds, following seasons, following survival. But one day, the hunters returned from the chase not with a beast, but with something smaller. A handful of seeds, a cluster of roots, a strange thought. What if the land could feed us without moving at all? The accident of growth. Perhaps it began by accident. A campfire left behind, surrounded by discarded seeds. Rain fell. The sun warmed. And weeks later, green shoots rose from the soil. The tribe returned, astonished. Food had grown where none was planted. The earth itself had remembered them. The first gardens. The women began to scatter seeds intentionally, near the caves, near the rivers, near the fires. They tended them, watered them, guarded them. At first, it was only a supplement, berries in place of the hunt. But slowly, it grew into something more. The tribe began to think, perhaps the land is not just something we pass through. Perhaps it is something we can shape. The domestication of beasts. The same thought reached the animals. Wolves that once prowled the camp now lingered at its edges, feeding on scraps. The tribe noticed. The wolves warned of predators. They guarded the camp at night. And so a bargain was struck. The first partnership between human and beast. What was once prey, what was once threat, became companion. The breaking of wanderlust, with seeds growing near their fires, with beasts guarding their nights. The tribe moved less. Camps lasted longer. The hearths grew deeper. The caves and clearings became familiar, almost sacred. The land no longer merely provided. It began to belong. The birth of villages. A single fire became many. One circle of hunters became several. Children were born, grew, and raised without ever leaving the same valley. These were no longer just tribes. They were the first villages. And with them came something new. Roots in the earth, as strong as any tree. The seeds of the future. No one knew it then. But in those tiny gardens, in those tamed wolves, in those first villages, the future was being planted. The future of walls, the future of kings, the future of cities, empires, and civilizations. The first stone was set, the first seed buried, and humanity's path would never again be the same. The village fire burned bright, but beyond its glow, another fire burned too. Not the light of predators' eyes, but the light of another tribe. For the first time, humans were no longer alone. The shadow across the valley. At first, it was wonder. Strangers seen across the riverbank. Their voices strange, their tools different. Another people, another mirror of what we are. But all turned quickly into fear. Two groups bound to the same land, bound to the same harvest. One river, one hunting ground, one valley. Not enough for both. The birth of territory. Once, the tribe had wandered. Conflict meant moving on, finding another place. But now, with crops planted and roots sunk deep, moving meant loss. The fields could not be carried away. The homes could not be abandoned. This soil had become identity, and identity demands defense. The first weapons turned on men's spears that once pierced deer now pointed at human flesh. Arrows that once hunted boar now flew across riverbanks. The first blood spilled not in hunger, but in hate. It was a revelation. The deadliest predator humans would ever face was themselves. The clash of tribes, they did not march like armies. They screamed, they charged, they broke into chaos. Stone against bone, fire against wood. Shields made of bark, clubs of sharpened stone. The earth drank their blood. The sky echoed with cries of rage and fear. And when the dust settled, the victors remained. The defeated vanished into silence. The first tombs for the first time, men buried not just their dead, but their fallen. Warriors laid to rest with weapons clutched in their hands. Grave filled with trophies of bone and stone, songs whispered of their names. The fallen were remembered. The victors were celebrated. And a new story was born, the story of war. The curse of permanence with roots in the soil came roots in conflict. No longer did survival mean fleeing the beast. Now it meant fighting the neighbor. War was no longer about survival against nature. It was survival against ourselves. The first scar of civilization was written not on stone walls, but in human blood. The memory of war lingers like smoke, but not all meetings between strangers ended in death. Sometimes, when spears lowered, hands opened, and within those hands lay the first sparks of something greater than conquest, the spark of trade. The encounter at the river, two tribes, two fires, a river between them. One has more than it needs, obsidian blades sharp as teeth. The other has something rarer still, salt harvested from dried lakes. At first there is silence, eyes narrow, fingers twitch at spear shafts. But instead of blood, a gesture, a blade held out, a pouch of salt offered, a pause, then an exchange. No one dies that night. Instead, both fires burn brighter. The first markets without walls from that moment, the idea spread like sparks on dry grass. Why take with blood when you can give and gain more? On riverbanks, at crossroads, in the shadows of valleys, tribes began to meet, not to fight, but to bargain. Stone tools for hides, shells for grain, ochre pigments for flint. Each object carried a story, and with it, connection. The gift of distance trade meant reaching beyond the valley, beyond the horizon. From faraway coasts came seashells never seen inland. From mountain tribes came obsidian sharper than bone. From deserts came salt, precious as life itself. The world grew larger with every exchange. Humans no longer lived only in their own valley. They lived in the echoes of places they had never seen. The language of exchange with trade came something else, understanding. Signs, gestures, words, the first fragile bridges of language. Hands pointed, objects displayed, values measured. And slowly, words followed. Different tongues learning to bend toward one another. Commerce birthed communication, and communication birthed culture. The bond between strangers' trade was not only material, it was survival through peace. For every tribe that chose to trade rather than fight, another generation lived. A child wore beads carved from a shell taken hundreds of miles away. A hunter held a blade shaped from a stone older than his valley, each object a thread in the growing web of human connection. The dawn of wealth for the first time, some had more than others. The one who controlled the salt, the obsidian, the grain, they gained influence. Wealth was no longer only food or fire, it was what could be exchanged. The seeds of inequality were sown, but so too were the seeds of civilization. The world woven together with every trade, the world shrank. Tribes once isolated now carried fragments of each other's lands. Knowledge spread faster than footsteps. Innovation leapt across rivers, mountains, deserts, and slowly a network emerged, a web of exchange binding humanity into something larger than a tribe, larger than a valley. The first glimpse of a world connected. You sit by the fire. Smoke curls upward, vanishing into the night. Children huddle close, eyes wide, waiting for words. The hunt is over. The trade is done. Now comes the most important part of the night, the telling. The birth of story. At first, the stories were simple. A hunter's memory of the great lion he faced. A mother's warning of the river spirit that pulls children beneath the current. A whisper about ancestors who still walk in the wind. But words grew heavier. Tales grew longer. The world itself became a stage for meaning. Firelight gods, the thunder was no longer just noise, it was a god's roar. The moon was no longer just light, it was a watchful eye. The stars were no longer distant fires, they were ancestors, burning eternally above. Fear became myth, wonder became faith, and stories became bridges across the unknown. The power of belief: a story could warn, a story could guide, but most importantly, a story could bind. When the tribe believed the same tale, they moved as one. When they feared the same spirit, they obeyed the same rules. When they worshipped the same God, they found unity beyond blood. The first laws were not written in stone. They were spoken in stories. The spirits of the hunters painted beasts on cave walls, not just to remember, but to summon. Every painted bison was a prayer, every red handprint a promise. The hunt was no longer just survival. It was a ritual, a communion between man, beast, and spirit. And when the hunt succeeded, it proved the story was true. The first shamans among the tribe rose figures who carried the heaviest stories, men and women who dreamed strange dreams, who spoke with firelight voices, who claimed to walk between the living and the dead. They became shamans, storytellers, healers, keepers of the unseen. And with them, power shifted. Not just the strongest, not just the fiercest, but the ones who shaped belief held sway. Myths on the wind through trade, stories traveled. A tale born in one valley could spread to another, carried with shells and stone. Myths shifted with each telling, changing, growing, evolving. But their power endured. Soon, entire regions whispered of the same sky gods, the same river spirits, the same world beyond death. The first civilizations in the mind: before there were cities of stone, there were cities of story. Invisible kingdoms of gods, spirits, and ancestors, real enough to guide behavior, real enough to shape culture, real enough to outlast the tellers. The human mind had discovered its greatest weapon: not fire, not stone, but myth. The night is silent, the fire burns low, and in that silence you hear them, the voices of the dead, not in words but in memory, in the wind, in the echo of the flames. For the first time, death is not simply absence, it is presence, and the dead do not vanish, they remain. The first burials: long before villages, before trade, before fields of grain, humans began to bury their dead, not left to rot, not abandoned to scavengers, but placed carefully in the earth, wrapped in skins, painted with ochre, surrounded by tools and beads. Why? Because the living believed the dead would need them, because part of them still lived somewhere beyond. Every grave was not just a resting place, it was a doorway. The weight of memory: to bury the dead is to carry them forward. Each mound, each stone, each painted bone became a reminder: they were here, they are still with us. Children were told stories of ancestors they never met, and those stories gave the tribe strength. We are not alone, we walk with those who came before. The rise of ritual death was no longer chaos, it became ceremony. Fires lit at the grave, songs sung into the night, bones carried as talismans. Ritual gave order to grief, it gave shape to sorrow, and it bound the tribe in moments of loss. Shamans and the dead: the shamans claimed to hear them, in dreams, in visions, in smoke and flame. They carried the words of the departed back to the living. Advice, warnings, blessings. The tribe listened, for who could doubt? The dead were always present in the world, in the earth, in the sky, in the storms. The ancestors as guardians. Slowly, the dead became more than memory. They became guardians, protectors of the hunt, keepers of the hearth, spirits who could be angered or appeased. A good harvest was their gift. A failed hunt was their punishment. To honor the ancestors was to survive. To forget them was to risk death. Stones that speak over time: burials grew larger, mounds of earth, rings of stone. Markers meant to last longer than flesh and bone. The first monuments were not for the living, they were for the dead. Silent voices carved into the landscape, so no one would forget who had walked before. The eternal presence in every flicker of firelight, in every howl of wind, in every shadow beyond the camp. The ancestors remained. Death had changed. It was no longer the end of the story. It was the beginning of something larger. And from that moment, humans would forever live in two worlds: the world of the living and the world of the remembered. The ancestors' voices grew heavier with time. Grave became mounds, mounds became hills, and soon hills became something more. Monuments. For the first time, humans raised structures not for shelter, but for memory, not for the living, but for the dead. Stones that do not fall, the hunter's hut crumbled with the seasons. The villager's roof sagged beneath the rains. But stone endured. It did not rot. It did not burn. It did not vanish. And so humans began to drag stones across valleys, rivers, and plains. Great slabs of rock, heavier than 100 men. Pushed, pulled, lifted, and set into place. The first act of defiance against time. The birth of temples, some stones stood upright, reaching to the sky. Others lay flat upon them, forming gates. Circles were carved, aligned with the sun, the moon, the stars. When the solstice came, light pierced the stones exactly as intended. It was not an accident. It was a calendar in rock. A temple in open air. Here, the tribe gathered. Here, the living spoke with the dead. Here, earth and sky met in silent ceremony. The cost of memory to build such monuments demanded more than strength. It demanded unity. Dozens, sometimes hundreds, working in rhythm. One tribe alone could not lift the stones. It required cooperation or dominance. For the first time, architecture became power. The leaders who commanded these projects proved their strength not in the hunt, but in the legacy of stone. The ancestors in stone, each slab was not just rock. It was ancestor made permanent. The spirits now had homes larger than any hut, taller than any tree. The tribe no longer needed to whisper to the winds. They could walk into stone circles and feel the presence of eternity. These were not buildings. They were bridges to the other world. Sacred landscapes soon, entire landscapes became sacred. Mountains carved with shrines. Valleys ringed with standing stones. Caves painted and sealed for the dead. Every stone bore a memory. Every path carried a story. The earth itself became scripture. The first civil engineers, though they did not yet know the word, they were engineers. They cut grooves into rock to move massive slabs. They rolled stones on logs. They dragged them across frozen rivers. They learned leverage, balance, and symmetry. Knowledge passed down not in writing, but in practice. Generation after generation moved the unmovable. The promise of permanence. For the first time, humans felt they could outlast themselves. The flesh may rot, the voice may fade, but the stone would stand. And in that belief, a new hunger was born. The hunger not just to survive, but to be remembered. The stones stood eternal. But around them, life still pulsed: food, water, shelter. And nowhere was life more abundant than beside the rivers. The rivers carved valleys of green across lands of dust. They gave water to drink, fish to catch, soil to till. They flooded and withdrew, leaving behind earth black and rich as blood. And slowly, humanity followed their currents, from streams to rivers, from rivers to kingdoms. The Nile's gift in Africa, the Nile surged and retreated with the seasons. Its floods were not destruction, but renewal, depositing fertile silt across endless plains. Here, villages grew permanent. Here, huts turned to clusters, clusters to towns. The river was a god, a mother, a judge. To control its floods was to master survival itself. The twin rivers far to the northeast, between the Tigris and Euphrates, life bloomed in the land later called Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. Here, canals cut across the plains. Mud brick walls rose. And for the first time, water was not simply taken, it was commanded. The rivers birthed not only food, but hierarchy. Those who directed the canals directed the people. Water became power. The Indus and the hidden cities to the east, another great river system flowed. The Indus. Here, vast cities took form, with streets laid in order, drains running beneath, wells dug deep. The river gave structure not just to fields, but to society itself. Though many of these cities would one day vanish into mystery, their order hinted at something new. The dream of civilization planned, measured, and built. The Yellow River's fury in the far lands of China, the Yellow River carried both life and death. Its floods were unpredictable, often catastrophic. Yet its soil, loess, soft and fertile, birthed fields that could feed multitudes. To live here was to gamble with the gods. But those who endured carved the foundation of dynasties to come. Rivers as roads, these waters were not just fields of grain, they were highways. Boats carved from logs, rafts lashed from reeds, carried goods and stories downstream. Villages no longer lived in isolation. They became threads of a larger tapestry, bound by currents. Trade flourished. Culture spread. The river was not only bloodline, it was spine. The birth of kingdoms where rivers gave abundance, abundance demanded order. Grain needed storing, fields needed dividing, floods needed predicting. And so leaders rose. At first they were the strongest, the wisest, the shamans. But soon they became something more, kings. The river was no longer free, it was ruled. The divine waters, the rivers, became gods themselves, worshipped in temples, carved into myths. The Nile was a deity. The Tigris and Euphrates were cosmic veins. The Indus a sacred flow. The Yellow River the cradle of ancestors. To anger them was to invite ruin. To honor them was to thrive. The first civilizations from these waters rose, the first true civilizations. Cities of thousands, walls of brick, temples that scraped the heavens. Written records etched on clay and stone. The age of wandering hunters had ended. The age of river kingdoms had begun. For tens of thousands of years, memory lived in fragile vessels. Smoke and song, paintings on cave walls, whispers around the fire. But memory fades, voices die, stories change. And so humanity reached for a new kind of permanence. Not in stone circles, not in monuments, but in marks, tiny scratches, carved and pressed, that could carry a voice across centuries. The written word. The first marks, at first, they were not words at all. They were tokens, clay counters shaped like sheep, jars, grain, a way to keep track of trade, a way to count what could be lost or stolen. But soon someone realized. The symbol could stand for the thing. A mark could speak. A mark could remember. The clay tablets of Mesopotamia in the lands between the Tigris and Euphrates, scribes pressed reeds into wet clay. The signs were sharp, wedge-shaped, cuneiform. What began as numbers became names. What began as tallies became contracts. And what began as records became stories. The world now had memory baked in fire. The sacred glyphs of the Nile along the Nile, another script took form. Hieroglyphs. Pictures of birds, snakes, rivers, eyes. Not just accounts of grain and tribute, but hymns to the gods, prayers for the dead. Every symbol was alive. To carve a name was to give it eternity. In Egypt, to erase a name was the greatest punishment, a second death. The Indus signs and the lost words farther east. The Indus Valley carved signs on seals. Animals, symbols, marks whose meanings remain hidden. The script remains undeciphered. The voice is lost. But each seal proves the same truth. Humans everywhere hungered to record, to bind the world not only in stone, but in symbol. The oracle bones of China in the Far East, cracks in bones and shells became canvases. Questions were carved into them. Will the harvest be good? Will the war be won? Will the child survive? Then fire was applied, the bones cracked, and the answers were read. This was writing not as memory, but as prophecy. A dialogue with the divine. The power of the scribes to write was not for everyone. It was mystery. It was privilege. And those who held the reed's stylus or brush held power. They became priests, record keepers, advisors to kings. The written word was not just tool, it was throne. Memory made immortal with writing, death itself changed again. A man's voice could outlast his flesh. His deeds, his laws, his prayers could echo centuries after his bones had turned to dust. For the first time, humanity discovered immortality, not in body, but in words. The end of forgetting the earth could forget. The sky could forget. But clay, stone, papyrus, they remembered. And with that memory came civilization. Cities ruled by law, kingdoms bound by tax and record, stories that could travel not by mouth, but by mark. The spoken world ended at the horizon. The written world had no end. For countless generations, people lived in small circles, families, bands, villages. But now the world grew larger. Writing kept memory. Agriculture fed multitudes. Rivers gathered cities. And from those cities rose kings. Not leaders of clans, not chiefs of hunts, but rulers of worlds. The first thrones in Mesopotamia, kingship was said to have descended from heaven. Cities like Uruk, and Babylon swelled with temples, walls, and markets. At their center stood a king, chosen by the gods, backed by armies, keeper of law. To disobey him was not just rebellion, it was sacrilege. Egypt, the god-kings along the Nile, kings rose higher still. Pharaohs, not men but gods made flesh. Their crowns gleamed with the power of sun and river, life and death. They did not just rule the land, they were the land. And when they died, pyramids of stone anchored their souls for eternity. Monuments taller than mountains, carved by hands of thousands, each block a prayer in stone. The law of Hammurabi power was not only stone and sword, it was law. In Babylon, Hammurabi etched justice into basalt. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. For the first time, law became written, unchanging, eternal. The king was no longer just warrior or priest, he was lawgiver, and law bound civilization tighter than any chain. The splendor of empire with kings came armies, with armies came conquest, and with conquest came empires, realms larger than any one city. Sargon of Akkad, the pharaohs of the Nile, kings of Assyria with iron chariots and walls of fire. They stretched their banners across deserts and mountains. They carved their names in stone so that no one could forget them. They demanded tribute, labor, worship. Civilization was no longer just survival. It was hierarchy. It was obedience. It was empire. The builders of eternity kings demanded more than grain and soldiers. They demanded monuments, ziggurats that rose like mountains from the plains, temples where gods lived in shadow and smoke, walls so vast they seemed to hold back the sky itself. The people built, and in building, they became part of something larger than themselves. Every stone whispered, "The king is eternal." The cost of kingship, but kingship was not free. To feed the armies, farmers bent lower. To build the monuments, laborers bled. To pay the tribute, villages emptied. Greatness for the few came at the cost of the many. And yet, the people endured, because the story was stronger than the suffering. The king was chosen by gods, and who could question the gods? A world changed forever. The rise of kings was the rise of civilization itself. Rivers were no longer wild, they were ruled. People were no longer scattered, they were bound. Stories were no longer only myths, they were laws. The world of tribes and hunters had ended. The world of kings and empires had begun. The world was no longer a patchwork of scattered tribes. It was now a chessboard of kingdoms, and each king hungered for more. Grain, gold, land, glory. The age of empire had begun, and with it came the first great wars of history. Across the march of Sargon in Mesopotamia, Sargon of Akkad gathered his warriors. No longer farmers with spears, these were professional soldiers, hardened by campaign. He marched beyond his city, swallowing villages, then cities, then entire kingdoms. His banners rose over deserts and rivers, mountains and plains. The first empire of man was born, not through peace, but through conquest. Horse chariots of thunder across the Near East, new machines of war appeared. The chariot, wood and bronze, pulled by horses that thundered across the battlefield. Archers stood within them, loosing arrows like rain. Infantry could not stand against them. They shattered lines, crushed resistance, and turned battle into slaughter. War was no longer a matter of courage. It was technology. The side with chariots ruled the field. Fire Assyria. Empire of iron, then came the Assyrians, masters of terror. Their armies wielded iron, sharper and stronger than bronze. Their walls were engines of destruction. They carved their enemies into submission, burning cities, enslaving nations, scattering people across continents. Their cruelty was not mindless, it was strategic. Fear was their weapon. Obedience was their tribute. When the Assyrians marched, the world trembled. Amphora, Egypt at war, even Egypt, the land of gods and pyramids, could not escape the tide of war. Pharaohs raised armies to defend the Nile and to claim lands beyond it. They marched into Nubia, into Canaan, into Syria. The Nile's peace was guarded by blood. Even divine kings had to wear armor. Camel desert raiders and mountain warriors, not all empires ruled by walls and chariots. Some fought with speed. Nomads of the desert struck like lightning, vanishing before armies could respond. Mountain tribes ambushed from cliffs, raining death on heavy soldiers. War was not only empire against empire. It was civilization against wilderness, order against chaos, stone walls against shifting sands. Globe showing Europe, Africa, the clash of titans. Eventually, the great empires collided. Egypt battled the Hittites at Kadesh, the largest chariot battle the world had ever seen. Tens of thousands fought, dust and arrows filling the air, wheels breaking, horses screaming. Neither side truly won. But for the first time, nations signed peace in writing. Even war was now bound by law. Candle the fragile flame for centuries, empires rose in fire and fell in ashes. No king could hold power forever. The Akkadians crumbled. The Hittites vanished. The Assyrians burned their world too brightly and collapsed under their own weight. But each empire left behind something. Roads, laws, languages, memories. Every war that shattered the earth also shaped it. And in the ruins of empires, new powers always rose. Sparkles the lesson of blood, the war of empires taught humanity this. Civilization was never safe. Every wall could fall. Every throne could topple. Every empire could vanish. But the idea of empire that never died. The dream of ruling not just a city, but the world that would haunt humanity forever. Empires fought. Cities burned. Kings rose and fell. But in the ashes of war, people whispered stories. Not about the armies, not about the walls, but about the heroes. The ones who stood taller than the rest. The ones who seemed half human, half divine. And as these stories spread, they became more than history. They became myth. Classical Gilgamesh. The first hero in the city of Uruk, a king lived, Gilgamesh. 2/3 god, 1/3 man, so the poets sang. He was mighty, cruel, untamed, until friendship softened him. With Enkidu, his wild companion, he slew monsters, defied gods, and sought immortality. His tale, carved into clay, became the epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest surviving story in human history. It asked questions still unanswered. What does it mean to be human? What is the cost of power? How do we face death? Crossed Achilles and the rage of heroes far from Uruk, across the seas in Greece, another age of heroes rose. Warriors who fought at Troy, men whose names became immortal. Achilles, the man-killer, nearly invincible but undone by pride. Hector, the noble defender of his city. Odysseus, the trickster who outwitted fate itself. These were not just men. They were symbols of glory, of rage, of the fragile line between greatness and ruin. Homer sang their deeds, and his words outlived kingdoms. Horse the charioteer kings of India in the east, the Mahabharata unfolded, an epic of brothers turned enemies, of gods walking among men. The Bhagavad Gita whispered its philosophy in the midst of a battlefield. Here, too, war was not just war, it was destiny. Heroes wielded divine weapons, but their struggles were human. Honor, loyalty, doubt. The story stretched longer than empires, carrying India's soul through the ages. Bow and arrow archers, tricksters, and wanderers, every land had its legends. In China, tales told of Hu Yi the archer, who shot down 9 sons. In the frozen north, skalds sang of Odin, Thor, and Loki. In the deserts, Gilgamesh's echoes blended with tales of mighty kings who spoke with gods. Legends did not belong to one people, they belonged to all humanity. Because everywhere, people wanted to believe, we are more than flesh. Our deeds can outlast death. Milky Way, the power of story. Why did legends matter? Because in them, people found meaning. Kings died. Empires crumbled. But the story of Gilgamesh lived. The song of Achilles endured. The wisdom of Krishna spread through centuries. Stories gave mortals eternity. They turned warriors into gods and struggles into lessons. They shaped how civilization saw courage, justice, love, and loss. Fire from history to myth, the line blurred. Was Gilgamesh real? Perhaps. Did Achilles live? Maybe. Were the battles sung in the Mahabharata truly fought? The earth whispers fragments but no clear answer. But to the ancients, truth was not the point. The story was the truth. The lesson mattered more than the fact. Globe showing Europe, Africa, the human dream of immortality, the birth of legends, revealed something deeper than war or empire. Humans feared death, yet dreamed of eternity. If the body could not live forever, the name could. And so legends were born to defy the grave. Every hero who lived in story lived forever. And in that way, we all became immortal. Long before cities, people looked at the stars, the rivers, the storms, and saw spirits. Every fire crackle, every shadow, every beast carried mystery. But now, in the age of empires, those whispers became something greater. Not just stories, not just myths, but religion, organized, ritualized, eternal. Sunrise from spirits to gods. The hunter who once prayed to the deer spirit now bowed before mighty gods. The river was no longer just water. It was a goddess, a life-giver, a judge. The storm was no longer random. It was a god's anger. The sun itself became a deity, watching, demanding, blessing. The world was filled with powers greater than men, and kings learned to wield those powers. Classical temples of heaven and earth in Mesopotamia, ziggurats rose like stairways to the sky. Massive stone platforms, layer upon layer, built so humans could reach the gods. Priests tended fires, offered sacrifices, read the stars. Every grain harvest, every flood, every war was placed in the hands of divine will. Religion was no longer private. It was public. It was architecture. It was power. Water wave Egypt. The kingdom of the gods along the Nile. Faith became empire. Pharaohs claimed they were gods, living Horus, sons of Ra. Temples stretched like palaces of eternity. Priests measured the stars to predict the flooding of the river, tying science and religion together. Death itself became a ritual, embalming, tombs, the book of the dead. The afterlife was no longer shadow. It was a kingdom, and to enter it, you needed the blessing of gods and priests. Fire, song, and sacrifice elsewhere, belief took other forms. In the Indus and Vedic lands, sacred fires burned to carry prayers skyward. In China, ancestors were honored with offerings, their spirits woven into family life. In the Americas, shamans climbed pyramids, blood and smoke rising into the heavens. Everywhere, humanity gave something precious, grain, animals, even blood, in exchange for protection, order, hope. Sacrifice was the currency of faith. Scroll priests and power religion was not only worship, it was authority. Priests became keepers of calendars, readers of omens, interpreters of divine will. Without them, kings could not rule. Without ritual, harvests could not come. Without sacrifice, the sun might not rise. Religion gave structure to the chaos of life. But it also bound people in obedience, in fear, in devotion. Milky Way, the invention of the afterlife. For the first time, people believed death was not the end. Souls would journey beyond the grave, to paradise if they pleased the gods, to shadow or torment if they failed. Religion gave life meaning. It also gave life rules. Every action became eternal. Every choice weighed by gods unseen. Globe showing Europe, Africa, the spread of faith. As empires traded grain, metals, and horses, they also traded gods. Ishtar traveled from Sumer to Babylon. Ra became Amun-Ra. Gods merged, split, transformed. Faith was not fixed. It was fluid, spreading across borders like wind. And with each spread, it grew more powerful. Sparkles the human need. Why did religion rise? Because humans hungered for order in a chaotic world. Because they feared death and longed for eternity. Because they needed stories larger than kings, laws, and swords. Religion gave comfort, but also control. It was both salvation and chain, both hope and hierarchy. Crystal ball, the dawn before the great faiths. These were the seeds, the gods of sun and storm, river and fire. But soon, the world would see something greater still. Religions not just of one city, or one river, or one empire, but faiths meant for all humanity. Faiths that promised universal salvation. Faiths that demanded loyalty beyond tribe or throne. Faiths that would define the destiny of nations, yet unborn.